Hello, and welcome to the Some Kind of Mystic podcast, the show that bridges all things mystical with the chaotic and unpredictable experience of being authentically human. I'm your host, Jessie Herman, life coach, energy healer, artist, mother, and channel for the non-physical entity group Vagrein. In other words, I'm some kind of mystic, and so are you. Today, I'm so excited to introduce two special guests to the Some Kind of Mystic podcast, Karen Diguer and Diane Fulford. Diane and Karen have been close friends for many years, who only recently understood their relationship in the karmic tradition. Two ordinary people who were destined for something extraordinary. They were gifted with what some would call channeled messages from higher dimensions, but what they prefer to depict as interdimensional communication. It was not until each of them launched their children into independence and completed their careers, one in senior levels in the Canadian government and the other managing global marketing teams in the high-tech sector, that first Diane and then Karen started receiving messages from an unknown source. Unlike many others whose similar gifts came from birth or from a traumatic experience such as a near-death experience, their connection to their higher guidance grew gradually until it was clear that they were to co-author a series of books providing a methodology that allows people to raise their level of consciousness. They both received messages about being bridges between higher dimensions and our earthly plane, and to lay out a clear path to higher consciousness for those ready, willing, and open enough to commit themselves to the unknown. They published their first book in the series, The Alchemy of Becoming, Being of Truth, in 2021, and the second, The Alchemy of Becoming, Being Love, in September of 2023. I'm so excited to bring you this interview in which we had a wonderful conversation and an amazing time. Please welcome to the Some Kind of Mystic podcast, Diane Fulford and Karen Diguer. First off, I want to welcome you, Diane and Karen, to the Some Kind of Mystic podcast. I'm so thrilled to have you here because I was gifted by you the book some time ago and have been, in the meantime, leafing through your book and exploring your Alchemy of Becoming on my own time, on my own self, and it's been a really lovely experience. So welcome to the show. We're going to get into what it is I'm talking about, what it is you guys do. But first, I want to ask you guys, what was the journey that brought you to this now moment?
I think we're going to let Diane speak to that first because it started with her first, for sure.
Okay. Well, the honest truth of all of this is that it's not terribly exciting. I mean, I had, like Karen, we both had tremendous careers. I was a senior public servant in the executive category. And I loved what I was doing. Worked for the Canadian government, was working on major policies for the government, and it was great. And then I started to get, well, you would relate to this, like these downloads, right? And these downloads kept coming in. And first I was like, oh, what is this? This is very strange. And, really just so occupied with my career, I kept trying to sort of put them in the background. But they don't do well in the background, I figured out. They're pretty persistent.
Yeah.
And it kept coming over and over again that there was a different phase of my life that I had to move into. I had to put an end to this fabulous career that I had. So I wasn't running away from it. In fact, it was, to be honest, it was painful at a certain point to let it go. Let go of my colleagues, let go of the staff that I loved, everything, the work that I loved, and put it to the side and then get curious, like really a curiosity and a wonder. I think those two go together, that, what was happening? Why was I getting these messages? And the messages were, the curious part of it is that the messages were about a path that was actually deeply scientific. And I don't have a science background. I mean, I have other types of backgrounds, but not a science background. So this was a mystery to me, is why were these all coming through as kind of relating to brilliant minds out there who were, cosmologists. They wanted me to understand the difference between Newtonian physics and quantum physics and astrophysics. And so that essentially led to 10 years, 10 full years of going where they wanted me to go, where sometimes the books would appear just on my iPad, like
Right.
the
Yeah.
whole book.
I've had that
It's hard
experience
to
as well.
explain. Have you really?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh my
I've had
goodness.
weird experiences, specifically with science books. And also when I began channeling, it was similar in that it was very much based in physics. And again, I had no interest in any of
I
these
know.
topics and found myself reading things that like, I was like, I don't understand this. I don't care about it. But yeah, that's a very similar experience. So you were being guided to read the books, really to absorb the information from these sources, or you also had with that, like, were the downloads the guidance towards exploring what was available here on this plane, or was there at that time also messages being given to you and through you?
Oh, both,
Okay.
for sure,
Yeah.
it was both. But I think what was happening is that with respect to the books, it was an, I want to talk about this because it's an interesting process, that the guides kept saying, we will map your brain to the books.
Mm-hmm.
So the way they wanted me to read these books were not in the order
Mm-hmm.
that the author wrote them, because I wouldn't have been able to understand it, because the authors were writing the books from their educational point of view, from their experience. I didn't have any of that. So what they wanted me to do is that they would select very specific pages in the books,
Mm.
and they would ask me to go right to that page and to pick up a concept and to understand that concept. And then they would take me somewhere else in the book, or they would bring me to another book where they wanted me to combine one concept from, say, one biologist to a different concept from, say, Jude Currivan's books on cosmology to something that maybe Joe Dispenza wrote, or it was literally all over the map. And so I began to feel that this was a great work of synthesis on one hand, synthesizing a lot of concepts from these brilliant minds, and my guides, putting together some downloads to be kind of the addition or the glue that brought all of these things together in something that was in a method, as it turns out, a methodology that's based on alchemy, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, like
Amazing.
knitting together all kinds of different concepts into something that turned into a methodology.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was a real horizontal, exploration, not in depth and everything, but pieces of this and pieces of that, knitting them together into something that actually followed the sequence of alchemy.
Mhm.
Well, that's beautiful. And so it sounds to me, Diane, like you were very much in a surrendered state when all this was going on. In other words, you weren't sort of fighting with it. And I relate to that because I am like you, was like, well, there's really no choice here. There's no choice. I'll read the book however you want me to read the book, or whatever it is. Like, sort of like you're standing in a bookstore, you're suddenly putting a book off the shelf and you're like, really? You want me to read this one?
Really?
Like, really? Okay,
Yeah.
fine. But I know in your case, Karen, you had more of what you even labeled or termed the left brain, the skeptic's
Yes.
view of things. So I'd love to know also of the dynamic between the two of you and sort of how you came to this work later on, and the way through that you have come to an acceptance or an understanding, because it sounds like, I know from experience, skeptics tend to have a bit more of a struggle when they do have mystical experiences or they do have things that touch them that are not understandable, because they do have
Yes.
to fight a little bit further against their non-believing or their, I wouldn't even call it fear, but I would like to hear from your perspective, like, how did you come to your point in this now moment where you have created this and collaborated on this together, and how did that work for you?
That's a great question, because it's a really interesting dynamic. Because I've always said that between us we have one great brain, because it's very different. We came from a very maybe a right brain approach to things and a left brain approach to things, and actually the two of them together combined actually made something quite magical and made it a little bit perhaps more accessible to people to understand. So I came to this later than Diane. She was kind of, we were always very close. We traveled together, spent a lot of time together. Um, and, I think she was reluctant to approach me and tell me about what she was experiencing because she thought I would be really put off by it. But one day I remember this on a walk, and it was like I was starting to get, autoimmune diseases, and my vitality, everything was just seemed to be seeping away. And this is after retirement. This is the time of life when I should be like flourishing, right, and enjoying every moment. And she noticed that and approached me and said, I really want to talk to you about something. And she started telling me about what she was experiencing. And much to her surprise, and much to mine as well, I was like, I love this. I need this. I want this. And we started collaborating. And the collaboration became one where she would get these amazing downloads, and I would help her unpack them and take it from her. They would come in pictures and geometric shapes and things like that, and try and help bring them more into more of a third dimensional way of communicating this.
Sure.
And we did realize that, she was, there was a call to write these books. And it was that collaboration of her with these amazing downloads and me with my ability to kind of organize the material a little bit, put it into a methodology, write the instructions, the actual instructions that were behind it. And in doing that work, I started to become a little bit more, I would say, well-rounded. My right brain started to kick in, and I too started getting downloads. But my downloads were not these horizontal knitting together. They were more deep dives, kind of vertically into certain subjects. So I would bring that to the table, if you will, and together we created something that was the combination of two brains melding into one. I think
it's pretty magical.
Yeah.
Put it that way.
It's alchemy.
It is the alchemy.
Yeah.
It is the alchemy. So I understood that, I would be the channel for communicating, but Karen had to be the channel for connecting.
Right.
And there's no point in having communication without connecting. You have to have both. So I think that's what we were able to do so magically together.
Yeah. And we both got messages about being bridges.
Yes.
And we came to understand that meant that bridging of the higher dimensions with the third dimension. It's like not leaving the third dimension, but actually bringing the two together and being that bridge between the two. So when we say, like when we talk about channeling, but we actually prefer to call it more interdimensional communication, because there's a bit of us in that communication as well. It's not a one-way street necessarily, like many channelers. It's more of a two-way street.
Yes, I would say it's a two-way street, though they have reserved the right to edit the books.
Yes, they have veto power too. They have veto power.
Right, okay.
We get a mark from the guides on every single page.
Absolutely.
And they will be very specific in terms of, no, you don't get to use that word. No.
Down to specific word choices.
Yes, exactly.
Right. Yeah, no, I hear you. I totally hear you. I know a little bit about how that dynamic works. And the super interesting thing about this book, and I mean, I don't have the pleasure of having the second book, which has just come out recently, but the thing that I found about this particular book is that it really is a very comprehensive guide on how to do some of those things, how to do modalities, how to really raise your frequency and your vibration. And one of the questions I get most frequently from people is like, well, how do I do all these things that are being presented? How, like you say, when they're talking to Vagrein, you say raise your frequency or be in your joy or come into this or come into that. But what's the methodology? What is the human step I can take today for this particular counsel that you're giving to me? And what I've seen in your book is that you are giving those very practical steps and a pathway that if it resonates with the person, they can follow and will very easily come to a space where they are recognizing in themselves the habits that they would need to take on to then raise their vibration consistently, or clear emotions consistently, or clear blockages consistently. So that's really beautiful, very unique thing about this particular work that you guys have put together. So it's beautiful that that's been challenged. But on your own human level, right? So coming into this work and becoming a channel and letting go of whatever skepticism you have about the unknown, there is that question: is how does one balance what seems to be known? And I will say seems to be known because our reality is a little bit questionable as to whether or not it's actually real or not, or known or not.
Mm-hmm.
And that perception of what we have that is the unknown. You know, if you're a channel, there's the always that question mark, like, well, what does the word guide mean? What does the word consciousness mean? Like, there's this aspect that we can't actually really understand with our human minds and have to at some point release into. How do you guys find that balance between being here and being in your everyday life and sharing this work and sharing this mission with people and being on that edge of the abyss or the unknown or the what is beyond human or beyond, you know, what we're currently capable of understanding?
Wow.
Hey, that's a big question. But it is, you know, it's an interesting, you can look at it from different points of view, is, you know, releasing the fear within you about being the new person that you are, and actually being true to yourself is part of that journey, right? Because you're kind of in the closet. I don't know if you've experienced that as well, is that you kind of, you know, you have to be very careful about what you say to who, you know, and you kind of feel your way along to that. But I think once you get, you know, and I think it's just, with me, it's only been, I would say, within the last year or two, where I've felt really comfortable with saying, you know what, this is who I am. I am both a human in the third dimension, and I'm both connected to other dimensions. And I consider it a gift, and I'm not going to hide it anymore. I am what I am. And you just come to that sense of comfort. And I think that's letting go of fear.
Mm-hmm.
Just letting go of what doesn't serve you, letting go of the fear of not fitting in, of not fitting into that persona, and letting go of that persona that you created, and being more comfortable with who you are becoming, which is what the book is all about.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think that's a really good description. But it does, I don't know if you've experienced this, but it does slowly kind of overtake you. Like it can start off that you can sort of say, okay, well, I'm going to spend 2 hours a day on this or whatever, and I'm going to do these other things that are really in my small self third dimensional world. And but letting go, you mentioned this earlier, letting go of the resistance to it is key. And that you get into the flow of it, and you really realize that you are actually, what we're being asked to do is to bring that higher consciousness into our everyday lives. It's not one or the other. It's not a zero-sum game. It's not like, I kind of started out with little compartments, if you know what I mean.
It becomes indistinguishable.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because it's the whole idea is that I think our experience here in this incarnation on this planet is really this idea that as we are evolving into the new human, which the second book is about the transition to becoming a new human, that new human is so human, but is also a human in higher consciousness, where it's the blend of the two. It's no longer sort of fighting one or the other. And the guides were very insistent on this, that one of the ways that we have misinterpreted, I think, things is that we think we have to let go of our, third dimensional small self loves, and that the more that we sacrifice that, the more that we become this higher spiritual level. And they were like, no, like, no.
You're here for a reason.
Exactly.
You have a body for a reason.
Yes. And it is this idea that, yes, we need to evolve, but we need to evolve in a way where we absolutely double down on what we consider life. Like they keep saying, double down on life. like it's why you are here, and you are here to experience it through every one of your senses. And the idea is to bring higher consciousness into that real grounded, third dimensional reality of our sensory experience. And as it turns out, it is the feedback that they want. Like the guides it's no longer a one-way communication. They have as many questions for us in terms of how are we feeling about things? Because this is what they said, and this is really interesting, is that they said, we understand emotions. Emotions are the language of the soul. They actually come with your soul. Feelings are the language of the body.
Okay.
We don't always understand feelings. It's the feelings that we want the feedback on, because they complete the circuit between feelings and emotions. So we have, emotions are what animate us. They are what give us personality, our uniqueness, our unique expression. But the emotions are driven by how we feel about things.
So
And the
how would
feelings,
you define those two or separate them for someone who maybe has been using those two words interchangeably their whole life, oh, it hurt my feelings, or I have this emotion, etc. But what would be in this particular sort of thread of thought or transmission that they've shared with you, what would be the difference for an individual to be able to understand, okay, this is an emotion and this is a feeling? How is that defined, or is it defined in that way?
Yeah, so emotion is, you can have an emotion of a certain characteristic, but when you actually take that emotion, the manifestation of that emotion, or how we individualize it and how we bring it into ourselves and what it does to our body, what it does to our, is how feelings manifest. So what feelings are the result of an emotion. It's kind of the end product. What does it do? How does it land with you? And what are you going to do with it? It's the way you process the emotion.
And if I can add, how they started talking about this is that they said, we do not understand your obsession with hugging. That was amazing to me.
Okay. I'm like that too. I'm also not sure about hugging. Please explain.
Oh, you must be from another dimension.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, but that's what it was. It was like, we see that you have this need to hug. You're either hugging a dog, or you're hugging each other, or you're hugging, and it's like, and it seems almost obsessive. And but we do that. Hugging isn't an emotion.
Okay, right.
It's driven by a feeling. And I suppose the other thing that people might be able to relate to is that beautiful piece of music that just gives you shivers.
Yeah.
Right? Now, that music can be a music that is derived from grief or great joy.
Right.
But you will get shivers from that. You will tear up, you will have shivers, which are all like a very sensory, bodily experience that you're having. So, I think it's that magic that our bodies are this wonderful tactile, sensory instrument that is keenly attuned to this third dimension that we're living in, and that to them makes us very unpredictable and quite
yes.
A little bit of a mystery.
Yeah, totally understand.
But I think they also recognize that it's something that is very unique, and that it might be something that has been missing and might have been kind of through evolution or, ascension, whatever you want to call it, have been missed out somehow.
Yes.
Okay.
And they want it back.
Right.
They recognize that this is something very special and that it keeps us unique. And I think they're looking to understand that more so they can actually bring it back. That's the role that we have in teaching them.
Okay, so
what does it feel like?
Speaking of this role, the role with them, the role with us, everyone here, everyone listening, what would you guys say is like your mission or your purpose or the goal or the motivation with these books? Is it simply what's being called through you and what feels like in each now moment the most exciting path to take? Or is there an actual intention and goal behind the work that you're doing in this now?
Oh, definitely.
Yes.
I think we can both speak about this, but
Yeah.
the goal is, I would say the goal is crystal clear. There's an urgency to it, by the way. But the goal is that we, as a species, we need to shift into higher consciousness. It's the premise of the books is, remarkably simple when I think about it. Remarkably simple. It really is this idea that you cannot address any problem at the same level of consciousness that gave rise to the problem. You cannot heal any disease from the same level of consciousness that gave rise to the disease. So, really, what they're saying is that we have reached a point in our evolution as a species where the issues that we have created are such that they are now intractable issues. Intractable meaning that we have no way of solving them. We have no way of looking at the mess that we've created around technology. I mean, AI is in front of us, around our healthcare systems, around the environment, our relationship with the planet. The issues that we have are so complex that we wouldn't even know which thread to pull, to actually start the process of really trying to address these issues and resolve them. So they're into this idea that you can't do that from the same level of consciousness that you're at now.
Yeah.
And they're very determined that we have reached a point in our evolution, for the first time in our recorded history, that we have reached the point where our level of intelligence far exceeds our level of consciousness. And this is very dangerous as far as they're concerned. They keep telling me, this is like giving a box of matches to children. This is, what you can create in laboratories now, what you can do through eugenics, what you can do now that you have split the atom, what you can now do with quantum computers, what you can now do with the sophistication of algorithms. All of these things can have both wonderful applications, but also very, very nefarious. They can be very life depleting for us. And they have been very clear that the moment that we split the atom, we reached a point where we cannot, their words, you cannot outcreate what you have created. That is what they're saying. So it's very sobering, where this...
We can't outrun what we have created anymore.
No.
Yeah.
The technology has advanced so quickly. Our intelligence has, is increasing logarithmically every day with quantum computing, and yet we don't have the level of consciousness to actually be able to manage it. So governments are spending their time trying to legislate it.
Sure.
But
Sure. Doesn't make any sense.
No.
So the hope is that you guys sharing sharing this message. It's not your message. It's everyone's message. It's all the message.
Yeah, it's everybody's message.
The hope is that this methodology will help increase consciousness to such a level at such a percentage of our global community that will tip the scale. Is what I'm understanding here.
Yes,
it's fast tracking it. It is this it really is. I think it's this idea that we can engineer our level of consciousness. So our evolution for the first time is not an evolution by chance.
Yeah.
It's an evolution by choice. Right? So this is like, no, the message is that we have to give you the tools to be able to actually fast track your rise in consciousness. So they say that every incarnation, every generation of the past increased the level of consciousness a little bit. I mean, we're not living, they keep reminding me that we're not living in the Game of Thrones era. What it's not that bad. I mean, we have raised, humanity has indeed raised their level of consciousness.
But at a snail's pace.
Well, too slow.
Very slow. Yeah.
Too slow in terms of the speed in which our frontal lobes have advanced. So this is now that we have reached this point with, splitting the atom, with technologies like AI, our understanding of quantum physics, now that we are there, this methodology was specifically designed to say, no, you can engineer a fast track to your level of consciousness. And so that is why the methodology is the methodology.
They call it bypasses.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And it's like they're pulling out all the stops they can to give us these fast tracks, which they call bypasses, to be able to raise our level of consciousness on a level that we never imagined in any previous generation, and never by so many. So, in past history, it was, the name of your podcast, it was only the mystics that held that capability. And they held it closely because they were afraid of how it would be used. Now the brakes are all off. Mm-hmm. They need us to embrace this, and they need to give us as many tools and fast tracking tools as possible. And this methodology is but one of them. There's many out there, as you're aware of, and we interview these people every day. So we need to take advantage of these bypasses to be able to create that spontaneous combustion. Doesn't take all of us, as you know, just takes enough of us to be able to create a shift in where we're heading.
Absolutely.
To change the tipping point.
So on that point, first of all, I would like to, because I know my listeners are always curious, you guys are saying your guides and they. Now, I know one of the questions that always comes up is like, well, is there a specific source for this information? Who are they? Where are they from? What planet? And all this and all that. And I know that I face this question all the time because Vagrein doesn't associate with like location, time, space, or anything like that.
Yes,
it sounds to me like you have the same energy and the same conundrum in that, what do you call this energy? If you just address that particular question so that anyone could know, and then I'm going to go right into the next question, then share with whoever's curious in this now listening to this, how it is to come to use the tools that you guys are providing, that this particular guide is providing, how to come to use the book. And if there's something, I know you guys have a website that can support the book, and there are even people out there that are teaching this. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So first, who are these guides?
Well, they're actually a little bit, maybe the same and a little bit different for each of us. Yeah. We have different relationships with our guides.
Lovely.
Oh, well, okay. So mine identified themselves. There are many. So it's not like, I don't see them as one entity. They call themselves a council. Okay. They are an intergalactic Federation of Light council. That's how they present themselves to me in multiples that I probably don't even understand. Mm-hmm. And the relationship, it's a very curious relationship, and I'm glad Karen's is different. Mine is...
So am I.
Mine is a very, I'm going to say this, it's a very business-like relationship. It's not that they're not friendly or looking out for me. They're I'm sure in their own way they are loving, but man, there's a job to do.
And they're demanding.
And they are exceedingly demanding, like very, very demanding. Like it's like, this work is urgent. This is it's like having a contract with me, and it's like, no, you have to do this. They told me how many, right in book one, they told me there will be 4 books. They gave me the outline of all 4 books right off the bat.
As well as the name.
As well as the name. Oh yes, the Alchemy of Becoming was definitely the name that they chose. And then this progression, going from truth to love to light, to just being. And so they were very, very clear about that, and told me when I would be writing them. It was like, I got to 2019 and it was, oh no, 2020, there will be no distractions for you. You'll be writing the book in 2020.
She wrote those
Yeah.
words before COVID.
Yeah.
There will be no
There
distractions.
will be no distractions in this year,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah.
So, so a kind of weird, very strange kind of, uh, more about my understanding, and I'm comfortable with it now. You know, I'm comfortable that we have like, okay, this is the deal. You know, this is the deal. We get these messages, we write this book, they have the final say on the editing, and you know, the book is then out there, and they actually don't really care that we promote the book that
No.
much. You know, for them, if it's in the morphic field,
It's fine. It's done.
That's all they
I know.
want.
You know, I think
Yeah.
I know your. I think I know your friends. I think this is who I was interacting with and have been interacting with for the majority of my life, because I've been around that boardroom table, by the way, and I know exactly what you're talking about. Oh
Yeah.
my. Okay. So that's super, super interesting. And yeah, it's very, very familiar. And I guess like hard to explain also what that energy feels like and how you know you've always been a collaborator.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes.
Just like, oh, right. I forgot.
I know. Well, it was this curious transition, right, of both Karen and I understanding that we needed to be operatives
Yeah.
of the consciousness level they wanted to be,
Yes.
but then transcending that to become instruments.
Right.
Mhm.
Instruments.
Yeah.
So there is this progression, you know, that you go through to understanding that, you know, you are becoming an instrument of this shift,
That's right.
right? And they're trying to guide us into that. Now, Karen has a different relationship with
Yes,
her
please
guides.
share.
Yes. Yeah. I guess mine decided that I needed a little softer approach, a little more
Ah.
loving and cuddly approach, because my guides are very loving and they're endlessly patient with me, and they've had to be very patient with me. I might not have been the brightest student in the class, but they've been
Oh.
patient with me. And they actually, one night I suddenly woke up and sat up in bed literally and said, Astrid, who is Astrid?
Ah, okay.
And that was the name that was given to me. And she represents my council of guides,
Beautiful.
of which
Yeah.
there are many.
Mhm.
But they've allowed me to personalize it
Sure.
with a name, and just like you have as well, right?
Mhm.
And I have conversations with her all the time.
Oh, it's brilliant. Love
But
that.
I'm very aware that she's in charge of bringing together the right people at the right time.
Nice. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
And they're very patient and very loving.
I love that. I love that. So, do tell us, how does someone dive into this work? How does someone begin? What are the resources that are available? And also, if you can let us know where they can find these resources.
You want to do this?
Well, I think it just, you have to be ready for it. You can't force this on anybody. Like I said, we don't go out and try and convince people to do this methodology. We put it out there and let them decide on their own. There's no twisting of that, but it does require an openness.
Mhm.
And we are really after, I think our core audience is ordinary people. And that's where we come from, right? We consider ourselves to be very ordinary people that were given an extraordinary opportunity. And some people are born, I think, Jesse, you can probably relate to this, born knowing you're a little different, born knowing that you have this interdimensional communication, that you have these invisible friends.
Mhm.
Some people, come to an awakening through, a traumatic experience. This is for the other 98% of the population, or maybe even 99, that just say, there's something that is just not feeling right, but there must be something more there.
Sure.
And giving them the opportunity to open themselves up. And all they need to start with is to be a little bit open, to admit that there's some brokenness. Everything that you see outside there is in you as well.
Mhm.
And to start exploring that and start unpacking yourself to find the truth of who you are, so that you can actually make room, get rid of some of those lower, denser frequencies and make room for some higher frequencies, so that you can actually grow and evolve as a human being.
Beautiful. Yeah. 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 So, you would suggest, I mean, that whoever does resonate with this message grabs the book or goes to your website, where can people find more if they're ready, if they do have that openness and they are, you know, identifying themselves as that ordinary person? Because really the book is written in a way that it does answer the most common questions that someone like me gets asked, of like the how to. It really is quite written like a how to
Yeah.
manual on
It is, yeah.
enlightenment and self-expression, even
Yeah.
I think
self-realization.
that is the if there's one, you know, key difference that I see in this book from a lot of other books. I mean, you know, we gravitate to all of these books that inspire you. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad that they're there because they're very inspirational.
Mm-hmm.
But the guides here were less interested in inspiration and
Very
more
practical.
very practical.
Very practical.
You know, what is the first thing you do? What is the second thing you do? What is the third thing you do? Like, it is a methodology.
Yeah.
And we now have the luxury of quite a few people that have gone through this. And the beauty of it, and you unless you go through it, you just don't really understand this, but how individual it is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that the methodology itself, I mean, it sounds like when we say it's a methodology, it
Yeah.
sounds like everybody does the same thing.
The steps are the same, but the experience is entirely different for each person.
Yeah, it's entirely unique. And people get to a point in the book and that becomes so real to them. Like the things that come to them could only be known by them. Only.
Yeah.
And that is when they get hooked.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that is when they truly understand. So the guides from the beginning of this were adamant that the premise of these books was to empower people, not to create a dependency on someone else.
Sure.
Like to really empower them to connect to their own guides, which is actually quite easy to do, surprisingly easy to do, and to be guided by their own guides through the book. And that, in a nutshell, is the magic of this book. Like, you experience that. And the moment people experience that, then they can't get enough. Then it is on a path that higher consciousness is actually an experience. It's not just conjecture. It's not just this, you know, aloof word out there, that you actually experience that, and you experience it at every level, you know, at a mental level, an emotional level, at a, you know, in your auric field, in your physical dimension. Consciousness actually permeates every cell of the trillions of cells that we have. Every cell is responding to higher consciousness.
Yeah, absolutely.
It becomes a pull. So it's either the book, we've created the website, it's alchemy-of-becoming-.com, and as a companion guide, just to give people a flavor for what they can expect and what the actual alchemic process is for both book 1 and book 2. So it's been broken down as an overview of the whole thing. Then it goes into detail about, you know, what are the 7 steps of alchemy within book 1, and how is it treated in book 1, and how does it change and morph in book 2.
Okay. So the first book is The Alchemy of Becoming, A Guide to Inner Awakening, Level 1, Being of Truth, which is beautiful. Can you tell us the name of the second book, Level 2?
Yes, well, it's the same thing, Alchemy of Becoming, but level 2 now, Being of Love. So this is the transition where, you know, the first book is all about your sovereignty. You can't really go on this journey unless you understand that the journey is from within, and it is from connecting to the truth of who you are. At that point, then you are set, then you are ready to continue the journey into this being an operative of the frequencies of love. And this is how to really change the world in terms of, you know, it's like, be the change you want to see in the world. It's, you know, that expression, that it's like, you know, how to be that operative of love. And there's no formula, by the way, for being an operative of love. We get to define.
Sure.
We get to define what that actually looks like and what it actually means. So that's the second book, getting us into that first level, getting us prepared for those who want a journey to go into the second level to be an operative of love. And then we're working on the third book, which is then going to be the graduation from that to being an instrument of light.
And more focused on the collective than
Yes.
the individual work.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where at the end of book 2, once people get through the end of book 2, to your other question, is that people start finding their own individual paths.
Mm-hmm.
Once they have that, really firm basis of who they are and start to displace that fear and let more love into their life and just a whole different outlook on things, a greater perspective on things, then we've just seen this magically happen, that people go off here and here and here, but it's all from a common fundamental foundation. It's really fascinating to see where people are going, where we ourselves are kind of going in similar but different directions at the same time.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's absolutely beautiful. So since the show is called Some Kind of Mystic, I'd love for you guys to define what the word mystic means to you.
Oh, wow. Oh.
On the spot.
Well, a mystic is, for me, someone who does embrace the unknown, right? I mean, inherent in the word mystic is this understanding that it's a different realm than what we would normally be used to, than what we would normally know. But once you embrace this idea of the mysteries of the mystic, it's that sense of absolute wonder. And in our journey, we've come to understand that our reality is just so small in the scheme of things, right? That mystic world
is so much bigger.
Is so much bigger. And so that's the one that you're just drawn, man, to want to explore it. It's an exploration that's just so beautiful.
I think a mystic to me is just an awakened, ordinary person.
Yeah, totally agree. Thank you for that. That's absolutely beautiful. And if you can leave our listeners with one last message, how to find you guys, how to explore further, and just anything you would like to share with humanity, that you have this moment to share with whoever's bound to listen to it.
Find a way to stay in the eye of the storm. With everything that's going on around us and about us, we have to find that unshakable, unbreakable you, to be able to stay in the eye of the storm, to be that oasis of calm that can actually influence others to do the same.
Yeah, to maintain a centeredness in these very turbulent times. And I think what we are promised is that there are going to be turbulent times ahead of us. It's inevitable. As part of the breakdown, breakthrough, it's part of the alchemic process. I would also say, do not let the word alchemy throw you off. It's one of those words that people can.
I struggled with it at the beginning.
Yes. But alchemy is a very natural process, as it turns out to be. It is all about the nature's process in terms of breaking down and breaking through, and that enlightenment you can find once you allow yourself to break down and question things and be curious and be in wonderment. That's when you get the breakthroughs. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Karen and Diane, for being here with me. This has been a wonderful episode, and I'm so thrilled to have had you here. So much gratitude to both of you.
Oh, and
back at you,
yes.
Jessie. Thank you so much for inviting us to share our message.
And thank you for your work, which is amazing.
Which I have referred to. I have been referred to your book by my guides on several occasions.
There you go.
You know when you get stuck on something?
Yeah. We're all
it's in the library shelf. Yeah.
All on the same mission. So, thank you so much for that service to others. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Some Kind of Mystic podcast. If you're hearing this message, you've listened all the way to the end of this episode, and for that, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. It's people just like you that keep me motivated to bring you more and more enlightened content to the world. If you have any questions about the things we covered in the show or would like to follow my projects, please find me on www.jpherman.com. I answer all my messages, so don't hesitate to reach out. You can also find me on Instagram, and the details are in the show notes.
This comes with many bizarre moments, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and the guides, I mean, they do have some fun with us.
They do.
They
have a
really
sense of
do.
humor.
They have a sense of humor. Yeah. When we get something wrong and we're trying to take a picture of something, the picture will turn us upside down, and it will be a signal to us that we've got things completely backwards. You know, like it's like, hello, you know, can you not decipher this?
That's right.
Like, really?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's just been yeah. We've had so many, and part of, I'll just share with you, not necessarily with the audience, but this idea that in book 2, there was so many messages flying at me, and I one day I just gave up in frustration, and I kind of said, all right, okay, like, you know, I don't even know where to start this, because the writing that I do for the books, and Karen can attest to this, is not in order. Yeah, it doesn't start at page 1 and go to page, no.
Yeah.
They have me writing something.
That's my job.
Yeah, I have the same experience with Vagrein. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it starts over here, and then you're jumping back, and you're jumping over here, and it's just like, you know, your head can be kind of overwhelmed. And they said to me, okay, they said, you know, we'll try and organize this for you, but you're going to go to TED Talks, and we're going to guide you to a TED Talk. And I'm going, whoa, you know, there are thousands of TED Talks out there. And I thought, how are you going to do this? You know, like, and they basically said, no, just press the surprise button. You know, there's a button on TED Talks, surprise. And this video comes up, which is how to make toast. So, like, really, how to make toast? What do you want me to do with this? How to make toast? And so I watched this video, and damn it, you know, the whole thing is about how you create this like whiteboard with columns and rows, and you figure out. And so they're telling me it was like a bingo game. Okay, you see this concept? This goes on A5. A5. This concept goes on, you know, D3. So I am plugging these concepts on this great big whiteboard
with sticky notes
based on this concept that was a TED Talk on how to make toast.